Thank you so much for being here for stage 2 recap. It's so nice to see many older faces, and not like you're old, but I've seen you before, and some newer faces as well. So we're here to just recap this stage that was all about introspecting, the deeper waters. We talked about identity, her purpose, her preparation. What are the other hers? Yeah, her passion. There was her emotions, her fight, her strengths and her weaknesses. And so we have 2 incredible women of faith that I thought would be so great to speak instead of me just always yapping. There's incredible women that I learn from and I continue to learn from. And so the first one is called Yvette. She's here to talk about purpose, strengths and weaknesses, preparation, all the things that pertain to what God has called you to do. And so we'll be recording this session for us to listen back, or for people who aren't here, as one of their few Dangerous Women episodes. And she's an incredibly dangerous woman for the kingdom of God. So Yvette, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you can start us off with us. Who is Yvette and what are you passionate about?
That's a good question. Who is Yvette? She's not the person who's just wearing yellow and black today. Yvette has a big heart for the continent of Africa. I'm a Pan-Africanist, an apologetically black woman, not trying to be anything lighter than she is, not trying to be who she's not. I am confident in who I am. I am proud of who I am. It has taken a journey, but I am yearning to drive change. I'm not just talking about it. I am doing something intentional to drive change. And Yvette loves the hearts of women and men. I'm a boy mom, just in case you're wondering. I have sons who are amazing and lucky. The women in their lives will be the happiest women ever. Yeah, because we have brought them up with intentionality. So I have a 20-year-old and I have a 16-year-old. And but why women? Why is my heart for women? I always say that the face of resilience in this continent is a woman's face. We talk about doors being open, but the question is, are we walking through those doors? Or do we have to break those doors and open them ourselves? So that's why my heart is there. I believe that having walked through the journey I've walked through, it was not by accident. It was on purpose for a purpose. And as we will talk a little bit about her purpose, we'll talk a little bit about that. And in my journey of walking, I found some women who had gone ahead of me and held my hand. But most of the women I came across did not hold my hand. They were blockers. Yes, they were blockers. And you need to ask yourself if you're being a blocker to someone else. You can be a blocker or you can be a door opener. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful for every experience because there's no wasted experience in life. So I'm a ball of energy. You may not know it. Sometimes I just go, when I go into a new space, I sit, I chill, I read the room, I understand what's happening. But when I go into character, I am tons of energy. And I'm at such a good place in my life. I'm at a place in my life where I don't need anybody's approval. So like or hate, that's on you. I could not care less. It is such a good place to be. I remember in my early 20s, I was so yearning for approval, but I don't really care right now. I'm also at a great place in my life. I am a few months from turning 50, which is just so cool. I cannot wait. It's just so amazing. It's beautiful. I am a child of God. I am defined by who God says I am. That is what gives me the audacity to be who I am. Just loved unapologetically, loved unashamedly, loved in spite of my shortcomings, in spite of my mistakes, in spite of what people think. I am loved and I am aware of that and I take in that love every moment. I walk in gratitude. I mean, I could do this the whole afternoon, but I'm going to just give you a snippet of who I am. So the cause that I am for, I hate poverty. I think that poverty is not of God, and my life's purpose is to fight it. So even when I founded my company, Ojay Greene, and when I was working with smallholder farmers, I left a blue chip company job. I was on an acceleration path to sit on the top of the pinnacle of the corporate ladder. And I walked away from that because I felt that was not the purpose that God had in store for me. But every experience in my life has built me to become the person that I am today. And so I am still a story being written.
So you've mentioned purpose a few times. You said, my life's purpose is this. My purpose is not this. So talk to us a bit about what does purpose mean to you? What's your definition? And has it been static? Or has purpose looked different in different seasons of life?
That's a good one. Purpose is about intentionality. And if you don't live life with intentionality, allow me to say a few quotes that I love. I don't know who, half of them, I don't know who said them. Some of them, I made them up. But it's as if you're going nowhere. Any road will take you there. So you really need to, whenever I'm having a meeting or I'm having a conversation or even I'm having an argument, my favorite question is, what's the issue? What is it that is bringing this argument, for example? Or what's the end game? Why exactly are we doing this? The question of why. It's a very important question. And as human beings, we have been made to ask the question, why? Why am I here? What on earth am I here? Do you think you just came here because you had nothing to do on a Saturday afternoon? I don't think so. There is intent. There's purpose. So purpose is about intent. There is my intentions. And remember, I define myself as a child of God and loved by God. That is such a high premium of my life. And therefore, I always say that when you want to know the purpose of something, you go back to the person who created it and you go and seek their mind. So whenever I want to know in my journey, in my pursuit of purpose, I go back to God. So for me, purpose, life purpose, begins, it is rooted. The foundation is my relationship with God. So my relationship with God is not who I am in society. It is a private conversation of what he says, why he put me here on earth. And it begins in private. I have lived my life in public for a long time. Oh, I didn't talk about my married life. Yeah, I talked about being a girl mom. My poor husband. He's an amazing man. The best ever. I wouldn't do it any other way. I have known him for 31 years. We've been married for 26. We dated for 16. We met when I was 17. We dated for 6 years, married for 26. Yeah, so it's going to be 32 years at the end in December from when I met him. I was 17 when I met him, which is really cool. It's my first boyfriend, and he ended up being my husband. The many haters along the way, people just thought, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. I got married like 2 weeks after graduation. Who does that? I do. This amazing man has been a great cheerleader in my life, but he's a pastor. At the age of 23, I was thrown into the fishbowl of being a pastor's wife. And everybody came in with all their expectations of who they think I should be and how I should smile and how a lot of things. And to me, that was pressure. And I had to learn to ignore the noise. Not that their opinion didn't matter, but I could very easily have become an actor or do things for the people. And of course, there are people who thought I'm a very outspoken person. I guess you figured that out by now. So there are people who thought, hey, this character does not look like a pastor's wife. And I tell them, you have a problem? Talk to the person who chose me, and that's God, So not fighting for validation. But in terms of purpose, for me, purpose begins with who God says. So if I'm not talking to the creator of my life, how am I going to know what I'm capable of doing? How am I going to know what seasons he's leading me to? The steps of a righteous man, and man is generic for humanity, are ordered of the Lord. So if I'm not walking with the Lord, if I'm not having a vibrant relationship with the Lord, and I learned, before I met my husband, I had my own relationship with God. So I'm not going to let him determine how my relationship with God is going to be. Yes? And after all those people who have their opinions, who think they have permission to do all those things and me, I don't because I'm a pastor's wife. After they've gone back to their homes, in the privacy of life, my relationship with God still continues. And therefore, I have decided that is one of the most important relationships that I will invest in. And in that, I have come to understand the purpose that God has in store for me. But remember, I said that I'm still a story that is being written. Why did I do biochemistry? It started off in, I went to Loreto Convent Sangari just down the road, and I was there for 12 years, not high school. I mean, I was there from standard 1 all the way to form 4. But I did always want to I didn't want to do my high school in Loreto Convent Sangari. I wanted to do it in Kenya High. And I was capable of going to Kenya High. But when we did our standard 8, they brought in this thing of the quota system, where someone from Turkana who scored half the marks like you did could be called because it was a national school. So I missed that, and I was very disappointed. At that time, I can't say that I had a vibrant relationship with God. I was more religious, but I remember bargaining and saying, "Oh God, please let me go to Kenya High. I'll go to see you, and I'm going to get saved, and I'm going to love you." And I was there negotiating. Okay, that didn't happen. So I went to Form 1 a little later than other people because I was actually hoping that I was going to get a transfer to Kenya High. So it didn't happen. I was disappointed. By the time I got to Form 1, we had a science congress, and it was a must. I'm already late. I'm already 3 weeks late. And I go into the science congress, and I've just kind of like given my life to Christ. The long and short is I won the science congress. And after we did a research on corals, the coral reef. And I did it with a friend of mine, and we won. And just before winning, I remember sitting down in the quadrangle, and I just got a sense that we were going to win. And it was the Lord speaking to me. And I started a pathway in science. And when I got to Form 4, I had to decide whether I want to do the science congress or I want to study for my exams and go to university. So for me, going to the University of Nairobi was, it was an achievement. I don't know how you guys feel, but we didn't have too many universities that time. I do a project on penicillin. Penicillin is a medicine. Augmentin is now one of the most common penicillins ever. And then we win. That was not the plan. Then we had to go now, and I had to research some more. But as I started to research, I really enjoyed what I was doing. And I remember saying, "Oh my goodness, this is chemistry in a living being. This is so exciting." Because chemistry would just make my juices go, woo. It still does, And I remember saying, "Oh God, if only I could do biochemistry in university." Fine. That thought came and went, and I finished and I passed and whatever. Then I was called to Moi University to do anthropology. And my mother said, "No, this is not God's will for your life." And I'm like, "Crazy woman. I mean, I've made it to university. Let's be grateful." And her and her friends prayed against me going to Moi University. I smiled at them. I said, "Well-meaning women, but you're just zealous and I think a bit crazy." So me, I'm grateful I'm going to university. So I was working in a law firm, and I quit my job to go to uni. 2 days before I was supposed to report, there was an announcement in the newspaper. The lecturers were on strike and were told indefinitely. I've resigned my job. I've left. I'm hanging indefinitely. And the reason I'm telling you these stories is about purpose. God sometimes doesn't work in a straight line and tell you'll go and do this, and you'll do this, and you'll do this, and then you'll do that. So after a little while, in between that, my dad and my uncle, 2 men I respect, came to visit me when I was working in the law firm with a letter. And the letter was a fake. It was like, "I have this illness. I've had it all my life. Please, you need to transfer me from Moi University, Nairobi University." And I looked at that letter and I told him, "Dad, I can't do this." It was because of my relationship with Christ. I knew that by signing that letter, I'd either be calling a curse upon myself. I am in good health. Why would I be saying I'm not in good health? That was not making sense. And I just remember my dad and my uncle, 2 men I look up to immensely, confused, scratching their heads and leaving the office. So I resigned and I'm going to Moi University to do anthropology. And in that time when it was indefinite, that was supposed to be sometime in September. Picture this. My dad is randomly walking along, what is that place? It's opposite the University of Nairobi. There used to be Mercedes-Benz near, there's a Shell petrol station near Anniversary Towers. I've forgotten the name. I think it's the Shell petrol station is named after a rally driver somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, Vic Preston. Yes, Vic Preston. It used to be called that. I can't remember what it's called right now. My dad is randomly walking there and he meets a guy my friend's dad, whom he helped 13 years before the fact. And this time my older sister's gone to France for further studies. And he asked, how are your kids? And he says, he said, my older sister had gone to France. He says, we tried to get Yvette to Nairobi University, but that didn't work. And then he's talking about now my siblings who happen to be twins who are following me. And he says, wait a minute, what do you mean? This guy was now the dean of the Faculty of Engineering. And he said, bring her papers. We'll take them to the Senate. And my papers were taken to the Senate, and every other application was thrown out except mine. So when you entrust your ways to God, he works in the most mysterious ways. God honored my mom and her crazy friend's prayers. And she said, you were called to do sciences. This cannot be of God. And that was my journey. And I went there to do sciences. And from the sciences, I went into the pharmaceutical world. And from the pharmaceutical world, I went into the door of entrepreneurship and poverty eradication. When I got into the pharmaceutical world, I thought I was going to climb up the pinnacle and stay there and sit at the top and influence from there. But here I am. No title, no big name, but just doing what God wants me to do. So that's been my journey. It's not been a straight line. It's ongoing, but it is so exciting. And it's a place of great peace.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I would love for you, because some people may not be familiar with Sinapis, and then also Ojay Greene. Could you please share about how God led you along that path of purpose now? And were there any hints along the way, from whether it's high school, college, whether hints that God had given you certain strengths or passions that now has led you to this place?
So when I was in the pharmaceutical world, HIV was a pandemic. How many of you do you remember when HIV was a pandemic? When you go to places like Uganda today, there's a whole generation that lost their parents because of HIV. There are families that were wiped. And not just Uganda, even in Western Kenya, even my village where I come from. It was a pandemic. We saw, I started as a salesperson, and I would drive across the country. And I remember one day I was driving back to Nairobi. It was on a Friday. I must have counted 27 coffins going up to be buried. In the year 2001, I'd been working for 2 years. We were told that we were losing about 700 people a day to HIV. It was bad. So when I started to work, I grew up in a middle-class Nairobi family. So I was born in Nairobi. I was born in Mata Hospital and raised in Nairobi. When I went outside of Nairobi, Nairobi is a strange place. It's a place of ironies. You can be in a shell that you don't know that there's suffering next door. I always say that Nairobi is the town where you have what you call the urban poor. And the urban poor can present themselves looking really very well put together, but they've not eaten. That's very different from other places. But as I started to drive up, I would work because I was selling medicine. And when you sell medicine, you go into hospitals. And you'd go into, there are 3 sectors. There's the private sector, there's the public sector, and there's the faith-based sector. Okay, so there are mission hospitals, they are private hospitals, and they're public hospitals. It didn't matter where I went. I saw one thing: suffering. And that for me was the inflection point of my purpose, because I fought with that for years. I remember being in Kisii and I saw children dying of malaria. And I asked myself, how? Who dies of malaria? Really? I could see something. I saw desperation in mothers' eyes. And if there's something that God has given me, that he has deposited in me, because that's something I'd like to talk about in this chat, about the greatness that God has deposited in each of us, is empathy. The ability to feel what other people are feeling. And I was very disturbed. Very, very disturbed. And as I said, this is around about between 1999 to 2002. And in 2000, Bill Clinton was the president. And then George W. Bush became the president. That was before Obama. Maybe you guys remember Obama's time, you know. But, you know, I'm of that generation, and I'm not even ashamed, you know. So as soon as Clinton finished his 8 years, they started a foundation. There was the Clinton Foundation. Now, to buy antiretrovirals, it's only, and a lot of people like ministers and people in high power had HIV, and they would spread it to girls. young girls, impressionable ones, like some of you here, cars were not common. Nowadays, there are Ubers everywhere. So a guy shows up in a car, you're so impressed. You know, you're so impressed. You're thinking, whoa, he noticed me, you know, and you're falling for that. And there was a whole generation that was wiped. Because I did meet someone like that. I didn't know he had HIV. But I was wondering, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he so forward, you know? And he even took it personally when I told him, I don't know who you are. Just get out. You can't talk to me like that. He wanted to take me in his car. And I was in the neighborhood and my auntie told me the police were looking for that man. That man is a spreader. He gets young, impressionable girls, takes them in his car, either seduces them, and spreads it. And that's what was happening. It was spreading like wildfire. So in 2002, I was in Meru because I travel across the country. And the company I worked for, the thing about being they call it a drug rep. My husband says, oh, my wife, he said, my wife is a drug dealer. Then I'd say, yeah, I'm the legal one, you know. And then the drug dealers are called pharmacists. So you wonder, what kind of irony is this? Oh, that's a pharmacist, you know. Anyway. So, the company I'd worked for, it's a very flashy job. So you have a really nice car. You wear really nice clothes and you look really nice. That's all. I mean, image is everything. And so at the age of 24, I was driving a 4x4 and, you know, people just think, oh, people thought I was so rich. You know, I remember someone told me, oh, you change cars like clothes. And I'm like, amen, you know, from your lips to God's ears. But I went to Meru and I had all these gifts, you know, these promotional materials, and it was raining almost like yesterday, but not that heavy. And this guy he didn't have a sweater. I saw an old man and he was covering himself with polythene. And he didn't have shoes and he was sliding in the mud. And my heart broke. My heart broke. And I felt, the first thing I felt was guilty. I felt guilty about the privilege I had. And I remember just quarreling with God. I said, what do you want me to do? Why am I feeling like this? You know, I said, what do you want me to do? I felt so helpless. I wanted to help, but I did not know how to help. And I went about my day and I didn't get an answer until 2 years later in the heart of, I don't know if you know where South Nyanza Sugar is. Anyway, I saw the desperation on one end. I wanted to do something about it. I didn't know what to do. I met a man in Sonny Sugar who used to, this time I've moved from the first company. Now I'm working with the multinationals, the big boys. I'm working with AstraZeneca, you know, and there I am. And he says, do you mind giving me a lift to the next town, which is 50 kilometers away? And this guy is not even a doctor. He's got a diploma in medicine. So he's a clinical officer. And his kids go to USIU. So I was surprised. We're talking and driving. I'm like, excuse me, does Sonny Sugar pay for your kids to go? He's like, no. I'm like, what? So how do your kids go to USIU? I grew up in middle class Nairobi, and it was a stretch to go to USIU. I didn't go to USIU. And he said, it's simple. We farm. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I said, what do you farm? He says, we farm sugarcane. I said, now that's a story. That's a real story. You're not serious. Sugarcane has got all sorts of problems. And I remember I asked him, can you show me what to do? Because I was looking for passive income. And he was willing to show me what to do. And when I was just ready, we were expecting our firstborn. So I wasn't going to go all that way, excuse me. And then risk getting highland malaria, so that story. But the desire to do agriculture started. And so I started to do my research. I started to talk to different clients. I mean, it was just so interesting. And that led me into the pathway of agribusiness. And I got promoted in AstraZeneca. I'm in pharmaceuticals on one side, isn't it? And I'm doing research on agribusiness on another side. And I'm realizing, okay, this is interesting. So this is going to be my side hustle. So I thought I was going to have an agribusiness side hustle. And then I get headhunted. And AstraZeneca was great. It's actually one of the best places of my career progression. I was there for 8 years. But it was number 4 among the multinationals. There was Novartis, there was Pfizer, and then there was GlaxoSmithKline. GlaxoSmithKline was at the top. And then I got headhunted to join GlaxoSmithKline. I said, oh, this is good. That was my dream job from the time I was in first year. That's a sign of God's faithfulness. So I take the job in GlaxoSmithKline, and now I'm not just doing Kenya. I'm doing, even in AstraZeneca, I got promoted, so I wasn't just doing Kenya. But the long and short is I started to do countries in Africa. And I started to see the same pattern of poverty. And every time I saw poverty, I got annoyed, I got upset. And when I was on this other side working on my side hustle, again, it's like poverty was all over my face, so to speak. And I just kept seeing women. These two words just came to my mind, women empowerment. And it's a bit of a long story, but I decided that I had to decide whether I want to continue my life in the farm, in the corporate life, or I want to do it. I want to live to my purpose. So I quit my job. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you when Glaxo got me, they bought me a brand new Mercedes-Benz, it comes with the territory, it was very interesting because people used to look at me in a particular way. Now I just realized that most of them were fake. You actually think that some would admire you and some were filled with envy. Even those in the church, some like, she's a pastor's wife and she's driving. There was that as well. But that was not the point. There were a lot of fake people. And so I traded the Mercedes-Benz for a pickup. And people think that is just foolishness. But it was a calling to my purpose. And I started to work with farmers. And I started to solve, and everything I had experienced in the corporate world was building everything I was doing on this other side. And to my shock, 9 months later, we won a grant of $50,000. Another 7 months later, Obama was in Kenya, which was 10 years ago, and we won $100,000, and we were thrown from oblivion where nobody knew us. Now everybody knew about us. And all those haters who were talking badly after I quit my job now said, oh, we knew you were cut for greatness. See, I told you, there's a group of people who are fake. You have to watch out for those ones, huh? I was like, I remember saying people are very fickle. A little after that, CNN, I got a call on my phone. And I would do consultancy. So it was a foreign number. I was not worried. I was doing consultancy. And I called back. They said, this is CNN Abu Dhabi. Can I help you? And I said, listen, you guys are the ones who called me. I'm calling you back. And she said, if we called you back, we will call you again. And I hang up and I was wondering what exactly is going on. As I was trying to figure out what's happened, they called me. They said, is this Yvette? Are you from Ojay Greene? I said, I am. They said, our crew is in Nairobi. We are doing a story on the African startup. Can we do your story? I said, of course you can. Any platform to say the story, I will. And so they did our story. And that day when CNN was calling me, a friend of mine who had lived in Australia for a long time had come to Kenya. She and her other rich friends wanted to farm and they called me for lunch. And I listened to them. I said, no. You're not gonna farm like that. That is not how to farm. You're farming like, you're too theoretical. And so one of the friends was really impressed. And they told me, we have a scholarship in Boston. And they asked me, do you have a US visa? I had. And immediately I was called into the scholarship. So there's a story from CNN. There's a scholarship in Boston. Then again, I was invited to Silicon Valley. And then I was invited to Yale University. All in 1 year. That's the year I turned 40. Maybe that's why I'm excited about turning 50. All that was happening. And it was very exciting. It looked like I was achieving my purpose. You asked me about the challenges. When I came from, my family dynamics are very interesting. My siblings and my mother live in America right now. At that time, my siblings were not in America, but my mother was. So every time I'd go to the States, I'm like, woo, I'm going to Shags. So I'd hang out with my mom. And when I came back to Kenya, we lost 30 million shillings. That was everything we had. We didn't have money stashed. We didn't have a rich uncle. We didn't have anything. And we lost 30 million because Nakumata and Uchumi closed and they were our clients. And that's how much money they owed us. Yeah. Purpose. I knew that I was called to work with farmers and increase their income. God was going to use my marketing skills to do that. All of a sudden, when we lose the money, that's when the farmers remember that, my kids need to go to school. Or, we haven't eaten. And Yeah, that one is for launching a book. I think I'll call you guys when I launch that book. That was deep. That was dark. But here I am. God carried me. And because of that, I kept asking myself, how could this go wrong? I thought about it. I planned for it. I had contingency plans. What happened? And with that loss of money, there was also loss of dignity. And my wonderful husband, I think he was upset with me. I was no longer, I don't think I was his favorite person anymore. Because how am I rocking the boat of the family finances? All of a sudden, I owed people money. Hey, it was bad. Let me just put it that way. Do you remember what I said about purpose earlier on? When you want to find the purpose of something, what do? Go back to the creator. And I had to go back to the creator. I thought I was in the creator's ways. But all of a sudden, I had time in my hands. I had no work to go to because after all, there's no money. We're being thrown out of offices. Even that pickup I traded for was going to be auctioned. It's a place where people don't want to go. It was the place of shame. What am I trying to say? Sometimes in your pursuit of purpose, you go through some very dark journey. And I asked the Lord, why would you give me such a burden if I can't see it through to the very end? God didn't give me an answer. But when the time for the trial was over, the doors were opened and I was back. But I was back reinvented. And I didn't go to Sinapis first. I went to a company. I never imagined that when I quit working at GlaxoSmithKline, I told myself, this is it. I'm not going back to be employed. Goodbye. It was nice knowing you. I thought I'll wake up in the morning and regret. I got up after everybody had gone to work. I was left alone and I jumped on my bed. Oh, I danced. I was so excited. And no matter how bad things were after we had lost that money, the thought of going back, even if they called me for free, I would shed tears. I was going to sit down and cry. So the long story short is that after that journey, I got another job. I was more marketable than I was before. Who does entrepreneurship? You go back to the job market, more marketable. And the guy who hired me was a former client of mine who became a commercial director. And when I was quitting, he asked me, why are you quitting? I didn't tell him the real reason. He told me, I'm sure we're going to work together. 5 years later, he's looking for someone. And he meets me at a very posh place at the Capital Club. And he tells me, tell me about your business. And he starts shaking his head because I'd built a digital platform. We had become now an agri-tech company. Interestingly, we won that money at iHub, though it wasn't this iHub. It was the other iHub. The original one, the one at Bishop Maguga. That one, yes. Funny enough, I was looking at that dummy check today morning. I was clearing some junk and I was like, does this categorize as junk? No, this is memory. Let it stay here. So the long and short of it is that the pathway to purpose does not have to be a straight line. And when I told him, because I built a digital platform, I remembered my train of thought, I built a digital platform. And because of the road that because of my failure, I was hired into my new job. How ironical is that? And I was so broken that when they asked me, I used to drive a hard bargain. How much money will it take? I'm like, no, I have to. You've had those people, don't short sell yourself. Say what you're worth. No, I had no confidence. I told him, I'm not greedy. I won't ask you for money. I took a 40% pay cut from when I was employed. And he said, okay. And he said, oh, I can manage. And when I saw him do like that, I can manage. I'm like, you should have asked for more money. He has it, you know? Then he came back later on. When God orders your steps, he does amazing things. I had to go through the interview process. We're just talking. And at the last stage of the interview, he said, I've thought about this. I'm not going to give you the 40% pay cut that you asked for. I'm going to start you off where you left. Yeah. And he's been helping me because out of the 30 million that we lost, 22 million was debt. So he's been helping me pay that. That was 8 years ago. So it's been a journey.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, the last step is Sinapis. I got there after 2 years. Sinapis is an organization that works with entrepreneurs. It's called an entrepreneur support organization. I want to think that iHub is also one like that, but it's focused on tech. We are sector agnostic. It doesn't matter what sector you're in. And then we are also faith-based. All along, I never thought that, what does God have to say about business? I thought that business was a very secular activity. I have since come to realize that business is highly spiritual and it is actually a gift that is deployed by God. And those who are entrusted with this gift will go ahead to create wealth. Not for themselves, the Abraham blessing of I will bless you to be a blessing. And so I have been learning on that journey of wealth creation and addressing the current crisis that we have of unemployment. That's the work I am doing today, and I'll be happy to tell you more at a different time.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Yvette. And so you've mentioned a few things, like how purpose is not linear. And so how I've been thinking about it is like Moses and the burning bush. And every time we incline, we see something's burning. And when we incline to listen or even move toward it, God speaks. And the same way that God was speaking to you about just poverty and seeing these different things. So for many of us in the room, there may be things that bother you. I think even in the worksheets for her purpose or her passions, there's places you're meant to tick off. Like, what are the things that are happening in society that bother you, that upset you, or that you're passionate about? But even the very last questions before we close is, so you must have had some strengths for you to have ended up in these different roles. But were there any weaknesses that you had to work on within yourself that would have cost you opportunities?
That's a very good question. Let me start a little bit about the strengths. Let me just backtrack. You know, the thing is, what God expects of us is to be faithful with where he has put us. Because when you're faithful, he develops strengths that you don't even know that you had. If 26 years ago you told me that I'll be in business, I'd be like, you're crazy. Who does that? I never thought. Yes, I am convinced that I am among those people who are gifted in entrepreneurship. That's number one. But let's talk about the weaknesses. The weaknesses are the pathway. And we do this to ourselves as women so many times. It is called self-sabotage. You have a conversation in your head about the person you're going to meet. You've not yet met them. You have decided whether they're going to like you or not like you. You have written the script. And I'll tell you the story of the man who wanted a hammer. And he said, oh, what if my neighbor says this? Da, da, da. He went and entertained that conversation. By the time he rang the bell and the neighbor came, he said, I don't need your damn hammer. And he went away. Because he had the conversation where? In his head. The biggest weakness is within us. It is the voices in our heads. It is the voices. It could be someone who was really close to you. For some people, it's a mother who said you will never amount to anything, or you're just as good as I don't know what. You get what I'm saying? You entertain that negativity. And that's why I say it is not out. People outside you cannot put you down. They cannot. But you can put yourself down. Yeah, I'm told a story that Satan had a yard sale, and he was so happy. He was showing off the things that he sells. There were many things. This was $1, $3, but there was another one that was a prized possession. You know, there was disease. There was, what else? Annoying people. There was gossiping. All those things that were on sale. But there was one that was very expensive. And when he was asked, what is this? He said, no, this is my prized possession. It works on everybody. It brings down mighty men of God. I love it. I use it. When all else fails, this is the one I use. You want to guess what that was? Let's have some boldness. Exactly. You got it right. It was discouragement. Throw it in. And you guys, you're buying it, huh? You're buying it. When discouragement comes, you face it. That's why God tells us, fear not. We have to remember the reality that he is with us. We have to remember the reality that he will never leave us, that he will never forsake us, that he will uphold me with his righteous right hand, that there is no temptation that has come to me except that which is common to man. Let me tell you, if you're not studying your word, I'm not saying reading, I'm not saying reciting, I'm not saying doing memory. If you're not studying the word, where are you going to get your strength? You are in a war. If you identify with Christ, automatically Satan is your enemy. And there are people say, oh, you're obsessed with demons. Demons don't walk with horns and a sharp tail and telling you, ha, 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 I got ya. No, right there. And you must be aware of your surroundings. So those voices in your head are the things that I will ask you to take caution. Yeah? Someone wrote, whose report will you believe? We shall believe the report of the Lord. Yeah? There are reports going around, and that is the weakness.
Amen. Wow, that's so powerful. So even as we close off this section, even in the podcast, what we do is just share what I believe is dangerous about the person who has spoken. And you hinted at it. Now it clicks in my mind because she said that along her journey, there are people who put you down and then very few people helped you up. But Yvette, I first met her through my husband, actually, because she was doing a session with our young adults. And this moment I began speaking with you, you were so open-handed. She's so generous with her time. She would take calls with me even when she has a family crisis that was happening. But she's so open-handed to give her networks, to give everything she knows. And I think that's an incredible kingdom builder. And so, Yvette, thank you so much. And we're so grateful for what we've learned from you. Want to open it up for questions that anyone has for Yvette about purpose, anything she's mentioned?
Hello, everyone. Hi. I walked in and you're already speaking. And it's a weird question. But anyway, I'm coming from a forum, which was a business conference in the church. And the people there were couple businesses, right? And the dynamic was the husband went out and built the business. The wife stayed in and took care of the home. And that's great. Like, there's no issue there. But it was very interesting because both sets of speakers, that was the dynamic. And I was like, this is amazing. But what happens why don't we have dynamics where the wife is vibrant outside of the home and the husband is not necessarily, I don't want to say that he's taking care of the home, but it seems as though he has the lower, yeah. And so coming in here and then hearing you talk about what you're talking about, I was like, hold up, what's going on here? So I'd really like to know, and maybe it doesn't seem as professional or as go-getting as, but I'm really curious because I am passionate about my family, but I also think I'm very passionate about the work that I do, And so how has that worked out over the years, especially because you mentioned during that hard season, you guys had conflict and it's something that you had to navigate, right? So I'd just like to get a snippet of what that looked like so that I'm encouraged because I feel like that is the direction we are moving it, and not to feel as though it's either ungodly or it's not, I hope you're getting what I'm trying to say.
I get you loud and clear. Don't say anything more. So first and foremost, there was a lady who led Israel to war. Her name was Deborah. Do not let anybody tell you, I don't know what. God did not make a mistake making you the way he made you. And sometimes you can cave into the narrative of what I'm those ones. Yeah, I remember my father saying on my 40th birthday, he said, when she was growing up, my daughter was so strong. So she's thanking my husband for marrying me. Actually, because I used to wonder, is she ever going to get a husband? I was like, Dad, really? Oh, I thought we were close. What happened, But that's who God made me to be. And I'm not going to cave and be who he has not made me to be. But what has happened over the years, he's given me tons of wisdom. I don't have to come out fighting. In fact, I'm allergic to fighting. I am so allergic. I will see that conflict and I'm like, I am not going there. And it is not avoidance. I'm like, no, you're going to fight alone. When you're ready to discuss the issues, we will discuss the issues. If you have been gifted in it, why? What is the role of a wife? A suitable what? Helpmate. And sometimes if you're gifted in entrepreneurship, you go for it. Because why? You are helping. How many women, due to the narrative that you're talking about, their husbands died randomly and they're left stranded and they feel so helpless and they're wondering what they're going to do? That is a false narrative. He said, let us make man in our image, male and female, he created them. The full image of God is manifested in male and female. And they are just the way, don't even get me there. The theology of marriage and why marriages hit so hard. In the Trinity, God in 3 persons. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. God, one God. In marriage, the 2 become one. There is no inferior and a superior. Who told you? If the man does not know Madafu and you're the one who knows Madafu, you go for it. You understand? God intended that you be equal partners. Submission is not subservience. You get? And he gives you wisdom on how to navigate it. You can lead in that area without being disrespectful to your spouse. So you don't have to count that image. It so happened that was it. Me, I was that traveling mother. When my second-born was born, I traveled 13 times out of the country. And my family is 100% functional. Actually, he loves me fiercely. You get it? It was hard. I had my moments. I had the moments of doubt. I had the moments of questioning. We settled. Now, do you know something? Yes, we had conflict when I lost the money. But the lessons that I have learned today are an asset to my very own husband. And he has come and he said, Yvette, I did not walk with you as I ought to have walked with you. God makes it right. He makes it beautiful. You first trust God. Ask God to be the best wife to your husband. Talk to God about the gifts he has given you and ask him to show you how to navigate it because you can. The problem is we do it with a lot of lack of wisdom and it becomes a contention. Who said it has to be a contention? Who says there has to be one person at the top and the other one at the bottom? You were made to be side by side from the rib. The rib was on the side. He removed from Adam and Eve was created side by side. I hope that gives you a snippet. Yeah. Great.
Amen. You are ready to go.
Yanni, that one fired me up.
Okay. We have one more question. So Lule will ask a question and then we'll wrap up this. Okay. Yeah.
As leaders or entrepreneurs, how do we ensure we are being door openers and not blockers to the people that the Lord has placed around us?
That's really good. I'm going to take a step back and answer something you've not asked, and then I'll come to the door opening part. Okay? Now, entrepreneurship is really hard. Really, really hard. The failure rate of entrepreneurship is 75% within 3 years. All right? But what about the 25% that make it on the other side? Isn't it? So, let me say that if you're an entrepreneur, you better be intentional about it. My day job, I help people to be intentional about it. It is the lack of intentionality. I tell people, if a doctor with all his knowledge has to go to school for 7 years before they get a first degree and still do internship and then go for another year, another 4 or 5 years, they spend half of their life studying before they subspecialize and they're doctors. But you think you can wake up and say, I can be an entrepreneur. Hey, my friend, the average entrepreneur in America succeeds on the 4th attempt. Okay? Because of the lack of intentionality. But if you're intentional, I went into Sinapis to get answers as to why I lost 30 million. Can I tell you something? He has given me a business. It is on paper right now. It is $2 million. I can't wait. I've got 3 businesses. I've got another one that is 3.1 billion. That is launching in 2026. Yes? And that is in year 1. And I have another one. I cannot quantify it because those zeros are so many. There are so many. I have to divide it into dollars so that it looks a bit normal. Do you understand? Yanni, I'm telling you, the God we serve is so abundant. And once you appreciate his abundance, you cannot help but be open-handed. You get me? Because you were given. I don't have 4 heads. I sit down. These things, the 3.1 billion business, it came on my laps. Pop. I was busy being open-handed. I was helping in the middle of a conversation. And the wife says, but Yvette is here. She has done 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm like, yes, I have done 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, cap, it's yours. I have learned that money does not define me. Money comes and I never changed. Broke Yvette, who was underground in debt, is the same Yvette who's standing here. Is the same multi-billion dollar standing here. They just have not yet manifested, but the same person. Why? Because what I have compared to what God has, my goodness, I'm a beggar. I'm a beggar. The streets in heaven are made of gold. God is so abundant. When you realize what he has, you realize that it is foolishness to be mean. It is a scarcity mentality. It is a great deprivation. It came as a result of the fall of man, and it is a deception of Lucifer to keep us small-minded. And one of the reasons why we struggle and don't go to the other side, our visions are so tiny. Someone said you're doing business subsistently, like subsistence farming. Your greatest objective is that I can feed my family, that I can... Hello. Let me end with some statistics. 2 years ago, end of 2023, a survey was done. And I'm looking at you a lot because you're the one who asked me the question, so I'm locking in. Anyway, a survey was done. And 800,000, I'll call them kids, were released into the job market. 50,000 got formal jobs. 150,000 got Juakali jobs. My question is, what are the 600,000 doing? What about the people who went into retirement and found things hard and decided to go back to employment? So that was 2023. 2024, I don't know what the statistics are. 2025, here we are. Does it surprise you that when the Gen Zs were going out, there is a group of intelligent, frustrated people who do not have what to do? And entrepreneurship will open the doors. My last statistic, do you know who owns the wealth in Kenya? Not you, not me. Africans account for 3% of the wealth in Kenya. Africans. And yet we are what percentage of the population? More than 97. Are you getting me? Something is fundamentally wrong. So I'm really excited that you are talking about business in the church, because my day job, I challenge pastors and say, you need to talk about business. You need to get a platform for people to do this. Either we are part of the problem or we are part of the solution. But what I'm saying is this: open-handedness, when you know the master open-handeder, there's no way you cannot do it. It will flow like second nature. My name is Yvette Ondachi. It's been a joy.